It should come as no surprise to anyone that the city of Seattle absolutely hates landlords. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, another crazy article out of Seattle, Washington. And this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone because some of the most crazy landlord restrictions have come out of the state of Washington and specifically out of the city of Seattle. So before I get into this article, go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll keep working to bring you great news articles about the eviction moratorium, about landlords, about real estate investing, and anything else that comes to mind. So let's get into it. The Seattle Council poised to ban some school year and post-pandemic evictions, guarantee lease renewals. And this is coming to us from the Seattle Times. So, Seattle may soon ban certain school year evictions, prohibit some post-pandemic evictions, and require landlords to offer lease renewals in many cases. A city council committee advanced 3 bills Tuesday that would provide tenants with these additional protections, and the full council could vote on the bills as early as June 7th. The first bill would establish a new defense against most evictions during each school year for children and students, for their guardians, and for educators. Tenants could cite the bill in asking judges to halt their evictions in court. Seattle and Washington State have recently passed laws guaranteeing legal representation for low-income tenants facing evictions. Okay, this is absolutely nuts, okay? Banning school year evictions for students, for teachers, and I mean, come on. We're talking about the grand majority of people have kids, right? I mean, the grand majority of renters probably have school-age children. So you're telling me that you will be unable to evict any of these people for the entire school year. So the school year here, at least, begins in August and ends in June. So you would only be able to evict people in the month of June and July. I mean, that's it. 2 months a year would be the only time you'd be able to evict anyone in Seattle if this passes. That's insane. Okay? Insane. It would just create this huge backlog of people who are sitting on the ready for eviction, and we just can't get rid of them. Imagine if you're one of these bad tenants who likes to abuse the system after all the pandemic restrictions and everything have fallen. Well, then you have a kid in school like, no, you can't evict us. I have a kid in the school. So therefore we have to stay here for the next 10 months. I mean, come on, what are they thinking? This is insane. The bill sponsor, Councilmember Kashama Sawant, said evictions interrupt learning and negatively impact the mental health of students. This March, Seattle Public Schools had more than 2,100 students registered as homeless, according to district data cited by Sawant. 55% were doubled up with other families, and 17% were living in transitional housing, while others were in shelters and on the streets. Most students evicted in Seattle end up changing schools, according to a 2018 survey by Seattle Women's Commission. Imagine trying to focus while losing your home, Sawant said. See, the problem is, though, that is not the fault of the landlord, okay? That is the fault of the parents, okay? The parents are the ones who are putting these children into these types of situations. It is not the job of the landlord to provide housing for the poor and the homeless for free. It is not the job of a private individual to provide housing for free to whoever, okay? That is completely ridiculous. And the appropriate response to this would be if a student or and my other gripe is they put teachers in here. Educators? Oh, so now all of a sudden we have somebody who has a job and they can't be evicted either? I mean, come on. What kind of ridiculousness is this? Why are educators lumped into here with with these students? Okay, so we have 2,100 students were registered as homeless. So imagine if that means that we have a couple thousand evictions that can't go through because this is going on. I mean, that would ruin certain, landlords, etc. They have to go, 10 months without collecting any rent, without any recourse whatsoever to get these people out of their properties. I mean, what are they thinking? I mean, it shouldn't surprise me this is coming out of Seattle, because all this craziness about, tenants' rights, etc., that has been coming out of Seattle lately has just been blowing my mind. Tuesday's second bill would require landlords to offer new leases to tenants 60 to 90 days before their existing leases expire and before seeking new tenants, unless there are separate reasons for the tenants to be evicted. Okay, let's dive into that a little bit further. So they would require landlords to offer new leases to tenants 60 to 90 days before their leases expire. So let's say you get a tenant into the property, right? And 1 year lease, it's 3 months before that lease expires, and you have to offer a new lease immediately, unless there are separate reasons for the tenants to be evicted. Well, maybe you just don't like that tenant just doesn't work out well for you. And you're just like, hey, I just want your lease to end and I want you to go. Well, you can't do that anymore. You can no longer make the decision on who lives in your own property. And it's not always a negative thing when you're trying to get a tenant out of your property, okay? Sometimes it's just you and the tenant might not get along 100%, or you might have other plans for that property. You might want to get the tenant out of the property so that you can sell it. But, this is basically taking your rights as a property owner away. The third bill would establish a new defense after the pandemic against evictions based on rent debts incurred during the crisis due to financial hardships, with that period defined by Seattle's proclaimed COVID-19 emergency. So yeah, after the crisis is over, if you incurred rent debt during the crisis due to those financial hardships, then you no longer would have the right to evict that person. So let's say the person didn't pay rent for the last year and they had $1,000 a month rent. So they owe you $12,000. Well, as soon as the crisis is over, you cannot evict them. That's what they're saying right here, okay? I mean, that's ridiculous, okay? This person owes you $12,000. Why wouldn't you be able to file eviction against them to try to get them out of your property? The only thing they're going to do is drag it out, and if you're not able to evict them and they're not able to pay, then they will only just keep accumulating debt. Don't they realize what's happening? I mean, there's no provision in this that says, okay, if we don't allow a person to be evicted from your property, then the city will pay you instead. I don't see that in here. Instead, they're just saying, you take the loss, landlord. You're the landlord. You take the loss. You're going to provide this housing for these people. Like, what? Come on here, okay? If the city decides that they want students to stay in housing and not be evicted, then the city should pay the landlords directly what is owed to them, because the city is the one who created that financial situation. That's my opinion, but that's the only way that this should even be considered a factor, okay? But in my opinion, no, there's nothing that should be, people shouldn't be forced to keep these tenants in their properties that they don't want in there. That's what I think. I think that they should be able to get rid of the tenant at any point in time. I will say that the lease, it is a contract. They should, be required to stay there at least till the end of the lease, unless there are other factors involved. But, we're talking about people being forced to sign additional leases for tenants who they may not want in their properties anymore. We're talking about landlords being unable to evict students or teachers for the entire school year who are living in their properties. And we're talking about unable to evict people who accrued rent debt during the pandemic. I mean, this is just outrageous, and man, let's just never ever buy a property in Seattle, okay? If you are from out of state and you're like, oh, look at these returns in Seattle, no, don't do it. It's not worth it. Okay, not dealing with this mess.